Hey everybody, welcome to WhyBuy. Today we're going to be talking about the Michelin Pilot 4S sports performance tire mounted onto an RS5. So instead of doing kind of a full recap on the RS5, I wanted to tackle a different subject, essentially consumables, and in this case, tires. For those of you who are curious that watched the original RS5 review, some of the common questions are, how's it holding up mechanically? Have you run into any issues? In terms of how my RS5 is holding up, I've probably put on, since the last video, close to 40,000 kilometers. And aside from the routine maintenance, which you should be doing, the only thing that I've noticed is that it burns a little bit of oil, which in fact is nowhere near as bad as what I thought it was going to be, considering, I was reading stories of people complaining, oh, these things eat oil and that you just got to continuously fill it up. I'd say, every 6,000 kilometers, I'll add a quart of oil, but, that's already getting into taking it in for a service anyways, and getting it topped up. So yeah, other than that, the car has been rock solid, a lot of fun to drive, and I really haven't run into any problems. So every year, I usually go for a long road trip, maybe a couple, and before I do this, one of the first things that I check is to ensure that the tires I'm running are going to be safe to do the trip. There's nothing worse than going on a long road trip and midway through the trip, you have an issue with your tires, whether it's a blowout, you need to change them, they run flat, whatever. When I plan out this trip, I think about the kind of roads and conditions I'm going to be driving on. And it's important because depending on the style of driving that you do and how you drive your car predominantly, that's going to dictate the type of tire that you should buy. 34 degrees. So not too hot, but man, it's hot. Michelin is a company that originally was a mass producer, mass manufacturer of rubber products. And someone came in for a tire repair on a bicycle, I think. Essentially, they're trying to wrap their head around, well, how do we patch this rubber tire on this bike? And it wasn't long after that that they had patented a pneumatic tube that would go inside the tire, so you could just replace that. And that kind of sparked this whole trend of innovation to the point where they patented radial tires. And for a while there, I think Michelin dominated the market. Like, they had 100% of the market share. Like, everyone had Michelin tires. And I think the company's core values haven't really changed in terms of innovation. They've put out some really innovative, wacky stuff. I remember seeing basically an airless tire once, where it was just a bunch of spokes, and it really cool to see how it absorbed impact. And I don't think it ever made it to cars on the road, but what I did see is some industrial applications for you know, load lifters and just kind of smaller machinery that, I don't know, it was just kind of a neat thing to see. The reason I'm explaining all of this is I think when it comes to buying like a no-name tire versus a brand name tire, it's not just paying a premium for a recognizable logo. There is a lot behind that brand and the effort and energy they put into innovation, making, you know, better products. So let's talk about price. Tires are expensive, especially when you get into large wheel diameters and performance tires. Now, you're probably wondering, like, why do they have to be so expensive? And the truth of the matter is that I think tires are actually pretty cheap. If you think of material costs to make tires, there's a lot of rubber, they use steel beads, steel reinforcements in the construction. Like, the cost of good material-wise has gone up, especially over the last couple of years. So when you think about buying small tires, they're a little bit cheaper, and the larger you go, the more structurally sound they have to be, but also the more materials they have to use. So I think one of the easier places to start when you think about cost of tires, you should really think about the car, SUV, van, truck that you're driving. For example, like, I used to drive a compact car, a little hatchback Honda Fit, and the cost of tires for that car, I think they were on 16-inch wheels, very narrow width, and I could replace a set of tires for like 250, 300 bucks. And when you get into, say, like SUVs, vans, heavier passenger vehicles, not only do wheel sizes start to increase, but the load capacity for the tires that are going to be mounted on there. When you think about trucks, for example, not only are you increasing the wheel size, but sometimes they're rated to handle even more weight because of towing, the load capacity in the truck bed. All these play a major role in terms of the pricing behind the tires you're buying. So if you want cheap tires, buy a small car. So when it comes to sports cars and performance tires, you're essentially paying not just for the material cost of the tires, but the engineering of the tire. They have to be able to withstand high speeds, very high temperatures, and be able to move the weight of the vehicle around. When you think about a heavy all-wheel drive car, well, you know, that's what you want. You don't want to have something that's flimsy, because GT cars, especially if they're all-wheel drive, they're very heavy cars. So driving fast, lots of weight, you need that control. The agility of the car is just enhanced by when you're really on the edge and you want to thread the needle. they do what you tell them to do, and they stick like glue. And you pair that with Quattro, and they just, I don't know, it's hard to describe, but I still haven't pushed the limits of what these can do, just because every time I go a little bit further, I'm surprised that it can handle the weight. And they're just so competent. It might just be the exhaust note of this car. It's like a biased opinion, maybe, but no, it's a good pairing. Okay, so numbers on the side of the tire. What does that actually mean? Well, I always thought it was width of the tire, height of the sidewall, and then your wheel size. So in this case, it's 275, 30, 20. The 275, that's the measurement of the tire width in millimeters. The 30 is is not actually a measurement of the sidewall. What it is a ratio. So for example, 30 is a percentage that's taken from the width of the tire. So 30% of 275, that's the height of the sidewall. And then, yeah, the last number is the measure of the wheel size in inches. So in this case, 20-inch wheels. When you think about tire width, this is basically your contact patch. This is how much of the tire is actually gripping the road. Why that's important is not just for handling characteristics, but you also have to consider that when you go with a wider tire, you're going to have a greater contact patch. And if you go just a little bit further than your actual wheel size, the wheel width, it will actually hug the rim. It'll hug the wheel, giving you a little bit of protection around the wheel. And if you have nice wheels and you hate chipping them or scratching them, this is kind of, I wouldn't say insurance, but it's kind of a good precaution. So not only are you investing in a wider tire because you want better handling, but it's also going to protect the face of your wheels a little bit. The reason I bring it up is the actual width of the tire can really impact price. You might say, well, I don't want to go 275, maybe I'll go 250 or 225. But what ends up happening when you do that is, yes, you save a bit of money, but you're missing out in a lot of areas, and that can end up costing you more when you think about it costs, 150, 200 bucks to reface a wheel. So something to consider. Another thing to consider is your sidewall height. So if you go with a taller sidewall, there's a few benefits. One, you're going to get a more plush ride. And two, you're going to have that much more distance between the ground and the actual rim, the wheel. So a little bit more protection, a little bit better ride. The drawback, if you don't go with a lower profile sidewall, is you're not going to get as good of handling, and it's going to be a little bit more wobbly, and you're going to have a bit more vibration at higher speeds. So it's kind of a trade-off. If you want superior handling and the best possible performance, yeah, you want to go with a low profile tire, but you risk damaging your wheels. Most car manufacturers will actually have a recommended sidewall height or tire size in the door of your car. You just have to check and see what is the recommended tire for this car's weight and what it's engineered to do. So it's usually best to just follow that recommendation. So another number that you're going to see on the sidewall is the load rating and the speed rating. So a number and a letter basically grouped together. So on this car, I believe it's a 97Y. What this denotes is basically the load capacity for the tire. The letter, the Y, is actually denoting the speed rating. So when you see these on cars, you don't really think about it, but this is actually measured on a scale from A to Z. Z being the highest end, fastest, and A being kind of the slowest. So for example, I think Z is north of 300 kilometers an hour. So why is that important? Well, if you're putting performance tires on your car and you're going to be driving very fast, you need to have a tire that can withstand that kind of heat and wear at that speed to still give you safe handling. When you think about going at speeds, and this applies to all tires, not just all season summer tires, but like tires for SUVs, tires for cars, they're designed or engineered rather to handle different speed tolerances, because yeah, you could buy a cheap tire and do 150, 160 miles an hour, but it may not be able to tolerate that for more than like 5 seconds, and it'll just disintegrate under that load. So investing in an expensive tire, what you're really investing in is the compounds to ensure that it doesn't blow up on the road. The other thing you have to consider is tread wear. So the ratio is, for example, like if you had a tread wear of 150, it's rated for up to 30,000 miles. The reason why this is important is it could affect your decision to buy a certain tire or not. And this is kind of where we get into tire compounds and what they're engineered, designed to do. Let's say, for example, you have a performance car that you want good tires for, but you don't want to cook through your soft summer tires very quickly. You could go with like an all-season tire that has a tread wear of like 580 or something. But you can't just base choosing a tire on tread wear. You really have to consider the conditions you're driving in. So, for example, if you're driving just on highways and you're just commuting long distances back and forth, you're probably okay going with an all-season tire with a really high tread wear so that you get the most out of them and you save some money. But if you like doing spirited driving and you like pushing the car every now and again, you're really putting yourself at a disadvantage with that harder compound. And it's not even so much that all-season tires are stiffer tires, it's that when they heat up, they're designed to do different things. So a summer compound tire is designed to not only heat up quickly and give you lots of grippy traction, but you're also going to get a lot of heat resistance when you're pushing the car for long periods of time, cornering really hard, driving really fast. Winter tires are designed to give you excellent traction on ice and in snow. They have deep grooves and they're designed to whisk away the slush and snow that builds up on the tire, giving you safe handling in the winter. But drive the winter tires in the summer, that soft compound is going to obliterate in the heat. Basically, you'll just be wearing down your winter tires prematurely and throwing away money. Let's take summer tires in the winter, for example. The compound isn't engineered to drop down to those temperatures, so it becomes so hard and so stiff, you literally have zero traction because it's like rocks rubbing together. There's just nothing for it to grip onto. And this kind of brings us to the all-season, intermediate compromise, where I know a lot of people who will run all-season tires year-round. And it's in an effort to save money, I get that, but you're kind of running the risk of not having the best traction in the winter, and you're not really getting the best traction in the summer. And this might not matter to you, but if you drive hard, or let's say for safety, you want to stop quickly, your best bet is getting the designated tire for the winter or the summer. So another thing when you're buying tires that you have to think about is aquaplaning. So aquaplaning is not rocket science. It's just when the tire hits a wet surface on the road, puddles, where the road grooves are and there's long streaks of water. Some tires, when you hit them, they could be like skis and you're just all over the road. And that's one really good thing about the Pilot 4S's is that they disperse water really, really well. A lot of people refer to the Michelin Pilot 4S as the best performance tire. And I don't know if I agree with that. I've heard a lot of good things about the Continental Sport Contact 7s as being better, giving better feedback, better handling, but they're not as good in dealing with aquaplaning. So the tread design doesn't disperse water as well as the Pilot 4S. So yeah, maybe the Michelin Pilot 4S is a better all-round sports performance tire, because whenever I buy a product, I think about the application for my lifestyle. So you think about the conditions you drive in. Do you drive mostly in the city? Do you do long distance straight road traveling? There's all these factors that play into what type of tire you want to buy. And personally, for me, what made the most sense in a performance tire was I needed something that could last me in the city. I also needed something that if I want to drive hard and I want to enjoy what this RS5 can do, I want to have it accessible. So when it comes to buying a brand name tire versus say like a cheap no-name tire, I think you really have to take into consideration you get what you pay for. And this kind of comes back to why tires are the price that they are. It's material costs. When you're buying a cheap no-name tire, how is it possible that they're able to sell you the tires for less? And that's usually because they have less rubber. The steel construction and beads in the tire might not be there or as formidable as say a brand name tire like Michelin. The other thing too you have to consider is that when it comes to performance, reliability, how do you really know what you're getting? And you know, when it comes to brand names that have the history and pedigree, like Michelin or Pirelli or Falcon or, geez, Bridgestone, you name it, there's warranties, there's reassurances there that you're not slapping on a cheap set of tires on your fun performance car. When you put the money into buying a car that you really love and admire and want to take care of, why would you risk putting on something that could not only put the car in danger, but also your life? I think that for the extra money it costs to buy a proven, tested, good performance tire versus a cheap knockoff or something that maybe isn't as good to save $100 or $200, is it really worth it? Another thing that, like if you're shopping for tires, I don't blame you looking up YouTube videos and trying to teach yourself more about it, because there's so many options on the market as to what you can get and why you should buy it, and you can really get lost in the minutia of just how many brands and different types of tires each brand has. And you know, the thought had crossed my mind to, you know, look into run flat technology. So one of the things you'll notice with run flats, some manufacturers, the vehicle will already come with what's called run flat tires, right? So the idea being is that you don't have a spare, but at least if you get a puncture, you can drive the tires still flat for, you know, a limited distance at a low speed if you need to get to somewhere to get a repair. But historically, they're very loud, they don't handle that great, they're extremely expensive, and it just hasn't really gotten to a point where you would want to buy run flats. Now, when I think about tires and I think about, say, getting the variant of these tires in a run flat, so long as you check your pressures and you make sure that your tires are well cared for, not cracked, not old aged, like they're well within the safe parameters of driving, you should be fine. You know, don't drive like an idiot. You don't want to be hitting potholes deliberately or, you know, hitting stuff on the road that you don't know what it is. Just, you know, take care of how you drive, and the tires should, you know, more than hold up. In worst case scenario, you get a flat. If you're doing a really long road trip, yeah, maybe you can buy one of those donut tires and throw it in the back. So what is my opinion on used tires? If you can avoid it, avoid it. Don't buy used tires, because the risk you're running isn't so much that you're going to have an uneven tread wear and you know, if you don't measure it, it's not going to match up to the other side of the axle for the drivetrain. But you're also running the risk of damaged sidewalls, compromised wheel tread, maybe the steel beads inside are damaged and you can't see it. Used tires are a huge risk. And yes, I understand you can save a lot of money by buying used tires. But again, this all comes back to replacing a set of all 4 tires or buying quality tires that are brand new from the beginning. You're driving a car that is considerably more expensive than a set of tires. And to risk putting something on the car that you care so much about, it's just not worth it. So how can you save some money when you're buying tires? Well, if you keep your eyes open, every now and again, usually when the seasons are changing, so say if we're going from summer to fall, or if we're going from spring to summer, you'll find winter tires, summer tires, they go on sale and they usually have pretty good rebates. Now, keep your eyes peeled. You might see a tire shop that's, you know, getting rid of inventory and that sort of thing. One thing I'll say though, when you're shopping for discounted tires, always make sure you check the date stamp on the tires you're buying. Not a lot of places disclose this all the time, and it's really easy to find. It's sort of cryptic, but it has the day, month, and year the tires were manufactured. So yeah, a tire distributor might be liquidating old inventory because, let's say if they held on to the tires, even though they're new, for like another year, legally they couldn't sell them anymore. So the reason why the age of the tire is important is no different than you know, all types of plastics and rubber. Over time, they get brittle and they start to crack or disintegrate. So tires, rubber, over time, they become unsafe. Another way you could save money on tires if you join like a group, like an auto club, like a driving club. A lot of these groups that, I mean, you might find them on Facebook or whatever, they have sponsors, and it usually gives the members access to exclusive pricing. Like the Audi Club has deals with tire manufacturers where you can get discounted list pricing for tires, and that's usually a really good way to go. In some cases, you could save like 50%. So look into that if you can, you know, get into a club membership kind of thing, and that's always a good route to go. Okay, now with all that kind of boring stuff out of the way, how do the Pilot 4S's stack up? So one of the easiest things to tell when you're driving on these tires is, yeah, in the dry, oh man, they're so tacky and grippy that even on a heavy car like this, you can throw it around at low speed, high speed corners, and it's just, I don't know, it makes you feel very confident when you're driving. But some of the things that surprised me that was different about previous experiences that I had is that on these tires at high speeds, what you notice is that they don't fade. It's one of the things that with previous cars or different tires, I noticed that long periods of time with high heat and that friction, the tires get so soft, you really start to feel it. Even cruising at the speed limit on the highway, you get this kind of wobble. On these, I push the car in a lot of cases for a long period of time, and it's usually because the style of driving that I do, I'll be driving on the highway for hours, and then I'll come across a terrific back road, something that I think is, you know, oh, this would be fun to kind of, you know, put it in manual mode and start rowing through the gears. This is super dangerous if you're running a crappy tire because the tires are already stressed and hot. But what I found with the Pilot 4S's is that they just took the abuse, they took the punishment so well. And at no point was I feeling like I was losing grip or losing handling on the car. I was so impressed. The other thing, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get this on camera, is how these tires handle in the wet. This is a good example. You could be driving on a nice sunny day, and then all of a sudden, and it just so happens that driving through the mountains, it's inclement weather. You're going to get, you know, sunshine, beautiful day, and then all of a sudden it's a downpour with wind and it's cold. It's kind of like a miniature Nürburgring. But anyways, I got hammered with this storm out of nowhere, and it actually kept happening. I was driving, huge thunderstorm, lots of rain, then it got dry again, then huge thunderstorm. And what I found is that aquaplaning and traction, like I didn't have any issues. Not only did the car stay extremely stable, going through deep puddles of water and driving still really quick, what I noticed is that the stopping power and braking power, the compound held up, and it actually stayed really tacky and grippy. So, and yeah, now the road is dry again. This is perfect if you drive, realistically, road trips looking for, you know, these roads, hunting for these back roads and cool little places that you know, you stumble across it by accident, you want to open it up and drive and have some fun. The tires basically keep up with this style of driving, and that's kind of, it just sealed the deal for me. It's probably why I'll still buy, you know, the next iteration of these tires. It's funny how when you're out for a drive and you crack the windows, you can smell the rain before it's gonna come. It's just this damp, kind of wet earth type smell, and it's it's one thing that you don't want to spoil your drive. You want it to kind of enhance it a little bit, give you a little bit of wheel spin, and that's one thing I really like about the pairing of these tires with the RS5 and the Quattro, is that I don't look at it as, oh, I better go really slow and pay attention. I kind of look at it as like, okay, this is going to be a little bit of fun, and that's what it should be. You know, you might have a car with a great drivetrain, excellent tires, and you might have the skill and experience, and you know, it's not always you that causes an accident when you're getting on it and driving. You really have to pay attention to other drivers, and that's, you know, one thing is spending the money on something that'll help you be better at what you can do, but it's also helping you avoid what other people might not be good at driving. And the thing you have to remember too, you might be okay with spending the money and getting the tires, but not everyone out there does. I've seen people buy a lot of, you know, questionable used tires, or they'll mix and match, and you really don't know what other people on the road are doing. And you know, they might be okay with not spending the money and kind of white knuckling it, but you know, at the very least, I can buy what I want, what I feel safe in, and it just gives me a little bit of extra control in conditions like this where it's raining and I'm hitting deep puddles right now, and the car is still stable and it's not getting veered off the road. I'm not getting pushed around. So one of the things that I've heard, or what people talk about, is the Michelin Pilot 4S's aren't as fun, meaning that they don't kind of play around as much or give as much feedback. And it's funny because Audi's, I've heard the same criticism with the all-time Quattro all-wheel drive system. You don't get that rear end play, and you know, I think when it comes down to it, I'd rather have a balance of something that's safe and fun, because I'm not always on high alert and super vigilant and, you know, in the mood for some playful driving. It's just nice to be able to have kind of an all-in-one experience with one car. So with regards to noise, this is something that I think can be easily overlooked when you're shopping for tires. I don't know if you've ever heard like an SUV or a truck with, you know, big tires, like you can hear it even outside your car with the windows closed. There's this howling that happens. And while on performance cars, the tires aren't as loud and annoying, there are tires that are just uncharacteristically loud for the car. You're driving a car that is supposed to be comfortable, a grand tour, long distance cruising. The last thing you want is this humming and droning from the tires. And I've seen all sorts of solutions for this in terms of tread design, in terms of compound, in terms of even what they do on the inside of the tire. My Pirelli P0s that come OEM from factory for Audis, they actually have like a memory foam inside for sound dampening. And while I always thought like, oh, well, that must be the quietest tire, these are maybe even quieter than those. And that surprised me because they don't have that memory foam inside. They don't have that kind of construction. So I was really impressed with how quiet they are, in addition to being great performance tires. The last thing I want to touch on is, I guess the warranty. Now, I've never really applied these to tires, but this is kind of a really good thing about buying new tires. And that's getting credit towards replacements. So for example, these tires I think are guaranteed up to 30,000 miles. So if for whatever reason they fail before that, or the tread wear wears down before that time, what they'll do is actually measure the remaining tread depth where you got to, and apply what you should have had to a new set of tires. And a lot of brands do this. It's a great way to, you know, attract customers, but it does come in handy. I know people who have done this, and it's a great way to save money. So I think it all comes back around to the history and pedigree of a brand that you want to buy into. It's a small thing, but it does add up over time. And with that, like, I'm not saying that the Pilot 4S's are the best tires on the market. In fact, I'm pretty sure recent shootouts that I saw with journalists, they were saying that the Continental Contact Sport 7s even outperformed the Pilot 4S's, which for a long time have been kind of the best. So we'll see. Like, there's always contenders, right? I think Continental's German tire manufacturer, and Michelin is out of France. Both companies have been making tires forever, and I really like that, you know, as they kind of compete with each other, the technology gets better, and the value for the customers gets better as well. But would I buy these tires again? Without a doubt, absolutely. They're excellent. So if you thought this video was helpful, please like and subscribe, show your support, and thanks for watching. With the rain dirtying my car, I'll have to watch one of those WhyBuy car wash videos. Okay, running a test. The wind is bad. What kind of tires you got on there? And that's why we have those. If you were a track star and a runner and you didn't invest in some good shoes to maximize the potential, and that's kind of what I would say is what makes it easy to swallow the cost of buying these tires, is that compared to what the car can do, it's an appropriate thing to get for it. So, you know, it's kind of one of those, just bite the bullet and go drive. I don't know, it's nice to have a performance tire that, one, is not too expensive, and two, another number that you might see on the sidewall of the tire is basically the load rating. So in this case, I think it's a 97Y. And basically, this is kind of more of what these kind of cars were built for. GT cars are meant for just long distance cruises, and when you find a good road you like, you have some fun. One little quirk that I actually ran into, and I thought it was an electronic problem. So the memory functionality on the seat, the recall function wasn't working. So there's two memory seat functions that you can set for, you know, depending on drive style or who's driving. It wasn't working. And on top of that, what wasn't working is, if someone wants to get into the rear passenger, there's a function on these Recaro seats where if you flip it up, there's a button and it just automatically pulls the seat forward to give more space for the passenger to get in. So in as simplest form as I can describe it, all you have to do is pull the seat all the way forward, all the way back, all the way down, all the way up, and that's it. And it will recalibrate itself and it'll go back to working normally. One of the things that's really special about the RS5 is, or the B8.5 RS5, is that the engine is naturally aspirated, so there's no forced induction to get more power. So it's very natural and linear, But the other thing that's probably the most significant is the rev range. So this car doesn't need to shift gears until about 8,200 RPM. So it just can build and build and build and build that RPM rev range with just, there's something about it that's very soulful, very much like a race car. And from a practical standpoint, it helps the engine build power at max compression and max revolution. And it also, like driving on a road like this or any tight road, you could leave it in third gear, fourth gear, and just stay there because there's so much power throughout the rev range. You don't have to shift. You can kind of just hang out there. I mean, I shift a lot because I like the way it sounds. Just gonna rev the engine a little because it's fun.
Hey little buddy, what you doing on there?